guess like the one reasons I wanted to bring you here is to kind of talk about, which is really important, and you can take your time on this and everything like that, but not so much even just over the last year, because I don't want to invalidate your experience by just telling you, okay, I want you to only tell me about what you went through last year as an Asian, because I don't, once again, I think there's more to your experience than just that. But like, what type of things was it that, I guess, like growing up, not just so much to like the boxes that they put you in where they're like, oh, it's got to be practical or it's not reality, whether it's beauty standards and everything like that. Tell me a little bit about, I guess, like some of the things that may have added, if you do have any insecurities. I mean, you seem pretty confident to me for the most part, but I'm not going to assume, you know what I'm saying? But tell me a little bit about like the damaging things in which, and you can speak for yourself as an individual, because just like I think the Black experience is not a monolithic experience, but like, what is it like for you being an American of Japanese descent growing up? Like, what things that you had to like deal with, I guess, growing up?
There's a lot, right? There's a lot of microaggressions. Just people, again, like people assuming that they know me or assuming that they know what type of person I am just based on my looks. And then I remember, like, this is one of the big things for me growing up, was like I was just like so weirdly proud of like surprising people, because I was like, oh, I'm not like the other girls, you know. And that's just so interesting, because like that's again like part of, you know, internalized racism, right? Is that you are so wanting to be not what people think you are, that you turn away from who you are. I mean, I am Asian, that's who I am, but I'm not, you know, the stereotypes of being Asian. And I know growing up, like, I remember this, like, I still feel so bad about this growing up, like now, but I think I was about like 7 or 8, and my mom would like pack me like little cute bento boxes and like put a lot of effort into my lunches. It's just a traditional Japanese lunch. Like real boxes will have different sections for different things. So you'll usually have like rice, you know, maybe a protein, some veggies, and like little like pickled vegetables or something in it. And my mom would pack those for me for school. And I remember one day I came home and the kids at school like made fun of me. They're like, your food smells weird. Like, what is up with that? You can't sit with us. And I cried, and I went home to my mom and I was like, you can only pack me sandwiches now. I'm not going to eat anything that you're packing me unless it's a sandwich. And it's just like, those are like just like really common experiences of a lot of Asian Americans too. Another example, you know, just like people saying like ching chong to me, or especially like as I grew older, and I started like going out and like meeting people and like going to bars, like just like a lot of like fetishization, a lot of like, oh, you're Japanese, konnichiwa, like, oh, stop. And then there's like the thing of like growing up in a primarily white neighborhood where like the beauty standard and like the people who are popular are of course going to be white because it's a white neighborhood. And then just internalizing that, right? Like internalizing, oh, it's because I'm different, it's because I'm not beautiful, it's because like I'm not who I am, or like I'm not good enough. And I think it's hard. I don't want to say like it's like really hard, but like it's definitely hard growing up in that kind of environment as a minority, because so much of what you're exposed to is like a westernized view. It's like a very white-centric view, Eurocentric view. So when you are left out of the conversation, like especially like when you were young, like what are you supposed to think? Like I didn't have the kind of self-awareness when I was like 7 or 8 to be like, okay, so this is just like whiteness at its prime. Like this is not about me. When you're that age, you're going to internalize that. You're going to be like, okay, so it's because I'm not pretty. It's because I'm Asian, and so that must mean that I'm bad. So there's a lot of that for me personally growing up that I had to really, you know, unpack and revisit and rethink because of this Eurocentric view that was pushed up on me.
I don't know if you can kind of relate to this. So like for me, growing up in my blackness, I'm not conventional. I'm just like you. I have a bar in my album that says, don't put me in a box unless you fit me for a casket. Just because when I was younger, I used to hate, oh, you talk too white. You talk too white, or you're not black enough over here. This, that, and the third. And for me, I got to a point where I started like denouncing my blackness. For me, it was easier than, I would just assimilate to like any other things I was mixed with, any other shade of brown other than my blackness. A lot of that caused a lot of self-hatred for me until like my early 20s and everything like that. And so there was something that like my grandma told me growing up. She was talking to me about a barrel of laughs. I don't know if you know what a barrel of laughs are by chance. Yes, no?
Yes.
So a barrel of laughs is something that they used to have on the plantation, and they even after slavery, they would have it scattered around town because they didn't like black people to express themselves, express emotion and stuff like that. It would make white people uncomfortable. You know what I'm saying? White fragility threatens black stability. I say that all the time. Black people used to literally, on the plantation and then after slavery, they literally used to have to shove their head in a barrel, and they sometimes did not have water in it. So you would literally have to like shove your head in a barrel so you could literally laugh. If you were on a plantation and you were like, if you were too loud in the hut, I don't know what the hell to call them things where they held Negroes, I don't know. Then as time goes on, once again, like we're in town, we're not allowed to laugh around white folk. It makes them nervous. We're not allowed to cry around white folk. It makes them nervous. So we literally would have to shove our heads in a barrel. Then you could take that into like code switching. You assimilate to white supremacy in a sense, and you start like denouncing yourself. Like for me, I didn't break out of that until like my early 20s.
Yeah.
I don't know if you, and I'm asking that because like, did you ever feel like maybe these things would be easier? Did you have any identity issues as a Japanese American, feeling like, okay, maybe if I just stop being Asian, you know what I'm saying? Or stop acting like this, stop doing things traditionally, I won't feel this way about myself.
Yes, 100%. And actually, you brought up a few interesting points that I want to highlight right now. Is like, one is assimilation to whiteness. And assimilation to whiteness for minorities is partially a coping strategy. It's a way of maintaining safety, especially if you grow up in a majority white neighborhood. Like, you have to assimilate. You have to, I guess appeal to whiteness in a sense, because otherwise it's not safe. And then going along with that, then you have the issues of like, oh, you're not Asian enough, you're whitewashed, or oh, you're too Asian, you're not white. And then the problems with like, well, okay, like what am I? Like, what do you mean? Like, I'm obviously Asian. Like, what do you mean I'm too whitewashed? Those are the most frustrating comments that come from my own community that are like, you can't speak on your issues, like you're dating a white man. Like, you can't speak on these issues, you grew up in a white neighborhood. It's like, okay, like, one, assimilation to whiteness is a coping tactic. Two, I am speaking about Asian issues, like, clearly I am self-aware enough to understand if I am playing into white supremacy in a harmful way. Actually, this is like a totally different topic altogether, but like the issue with like, the patriarchy, right? And that's something that minority men or men of color do not experience. And there's a lot of invalidation of women of color for their experiences, not only as a minority, but also as a woman, that a lot of men of color tend to forget about.
Yeah, because I talked about this. You might remember I had her on the podcast before, Jordan Simone on TikTok, and this misconception that like for instance, like I'm a black man, but I'm a man. I know I benefit from the patriarchy. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of people think like, well, I'll speak. Like I said, I'll speak from just some conversations I had, but there's this misconception that, like, for instance, that, oh, we don't benefit from patriarchy, that's only for white men. It's like, you do realize that black men got rights before white women did, right? Like, that's a thing.
Men of color, while yes, you experience racism, you experience oppression, and that's not okay, you forget that you still benefit. I'm not saying you as in like you personally, but like forget that they benefit from the patriarchy still, not only within, you know, this white structure that we live in, but also within our individual communities. And that's a big problem. And I think that that's a big problem that men of color tend to have, because like I see so many amazing like Asian femme creators on TikTok who are doxxed, who are harassed, who get rape threats, who get death threats solely because they're speaking out about their experiences and calling out sexism within our communities. And sexism and racism are not mutually exclusive. Like, they can happen at the same time. Like, you can be a sexist and still experience oppression as a black man or as an Asian man.
You better talk. Go ahead. I think that's the scary thing is, like, even like, for instance, and I think I think we both know, in us being, you know, self-aware of like the climate in both our communities, I think what, like, sometimes that the privileged don't understand, and we can equate this to racism. We think because, and I hate when they say this, and it wasn't until a woman told me this, no cap, like earlier this year. It's not like I had an issue with it, but like the whole not all men thing, you know what I'm saying? I didn't really get the term ACAB until somebody hit me with that not all men logic. They were saying like, well, let me ask you something. When you're talking about this issue of like police brutality, you know, me being an activist in the streets, you don't want people going like, well, there's still good cops over here. It's like, that does not invalidate what I go through as a person of color. So why would you talk to women like that? You know what I'm saying? And when they said it to me like that, it's not that, like I said, not even so much I had a problem with it, but it challenged me and it opened my eyes to it. I'm just like, wow. Like, so now I'm like, I don't really have a problem with people say ACAB. I don't say it. But when people say it, I don't cringe as much. But it was funny that like somebody used that. They use sexism or they use misogyny to kind of understand like that structure for me. But yeah, I think that's like the big issue is people forget sometimes that like you got to go through twice the hurdles, because yeah, you experience racism, but you experience misogyny on an amplified level. You experience, just sexist comments, and not to say like men don't deal with, sexual harassment, the threats that you receive or anything like that, but
which is primarily committed by other men.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's not, and if you have a problem with this, because we live in this society where rape culture is normalized, and because men have been taught this way for so long that they don't see an issue with it. But then you're over here like, the fact that it's called rape culture.
Like, and this is another thing too, is that especially as an Asian woman, and fetishization is such an issue for us. And people are like, you should be like, why are you upset about that? Like, people want to fuck you all the time. Like, why is that an issue? That's what's so frustrating about it. In my personal experiences is that, we talk about sexism and then it's a lot. I get this a lot from Asian men. You should be happy. Like, we are desexualized. Like, people don't want us. Like, people want you, and you're just over here, upholding white supremacy and always dating white men. Like you are what's wrong. And like, no, fetishization is not a compliment. It's extremely dangerous, and it's implying that you are an object, a sexual object for someone else's sexual desires. Like, I'm not a human if I'm a fetish. I'm a fetish. That's an object. And I'm human first, and my sexuality, my sexual nature is a part of who I am, but that does not define me. That's not all of who I am. I have a lot of, I'm a multifaceted human being. I got a lot of things going on in my life.
You are, and that's why you're one of my favorite humans, because like I'm like, yo, she is a music therapist, she talks her talk, she drinks her vegan beer, you know what I'm saying? Like, you got a lot going on and everything. And I think like, and I can relate to this, not about the woman part, obviously. For instance, like what I went through last summer with like the protests and stuff, I'm like crying, like my makeup's running, you know what I'm saying, snotting and crying, and then like white women are coming up to me, oh black, oh you damaged black man, I want to just love you, and just, I'm like, it'll get up off of me, like please. And then like but men will tell me, they're like, yo, you gotta go for that. What is wrong with you? Are you like gay or something? I'm like, no. I'm like, nigga, that's not flattering at all. Like,
no,
I'm not.
That's like such a the idea that the fact that someone desires you sexually is a compliment is a huge problem. Because like that's so dehumanizing, right? Like I don't like sure, like occasionally, like when I had a hoe phase, like yeah, if you wanted to just have sex with me, that's cool. I just want to have sex with you. But like that's a consensual thing, right? Like I was. Hold on, Sister Maya. There's somebody sleeping in the back of the church. I need you to say that part one more. Not that you're not. I'm not gonna call you a hoe. You're a human being. But the consent part. That there's somebody wiping crust out of their eyes in the back of the church. You mind saying the consensual part one more time, please? If somebody only wants to desire me for a sexual relationship, that's okay, as long as I am consenting in that. And there are times where I consent to that, and there are times where I do not consent to that. I do not consent to being sexualized 100% of the time. Like, and you will know. I will let you know when I want that. But that is not the case the majority of the time that people come up to me.